I stared at the words on my computer screen, each one cutting deeper than the last. Please clear your desk by the end of the day, Charlotte. Human Resources will handle your exit paperwork. After nearly 5 years of unwavering dedication to Summit Crest Logistics, this was my reward. A cold, impersonal email delivered before dawn on a Friday morning. My father had died just a week earlier. I had taken exactly 3 days of bereavement leave, fully approved by my supervisor. 3 days to bury the man who taught me patience, courage, and what it meant to stand firm when life's current tried to sweep you away. And yet, here I was, terminated for failing to prioritize work during a critical period. I sank back into my chair, the leather squeaking in the near silence of the empty Boise office. Outside the window, the first hints of sunrise broke over the dark rooftops, painting the sky with soft streaks of pink and orange. Just moments earlier, I'd come in early, determined to catch up on work and prove my commitment. Now I was no longer the regional team lead of the top-performing division. I was just another disposable employee in a company that valued numbers over people. My name is Charlotte Reynolds, and until 5 minutes ago, my professional identity was tied to this place. I looked around my small workspace. A cactus my team had gifted me last Christmas, a photo of us smiling at a company retreat, handwritten thank you notes from people I had mentored. 5 years of life condensed into a few items that would soon be stuffed into a cardboard box. The email had been signed by Gregory Daniels, my direct supervisor, the same man who had patted my shoulder with hollow sympathy just last week and assured me my leave was fully understood. His words in the termination notice felt like salt in a wound. Failure to maintain adequate presence during critical operational periods. Was burying my father supposed to happen on a weekend that better suited quarterly reports? I didn't cry. I didn't slam my fist on the desk or storm into Gregory's office demanding answers. Instead, I reached for my phone, snapped a photo of the email, and forwarded it to my personal account. Then, with calm precision, I powered down my computer and began packing the fragments of my career into a single box. The office was still empty as I moved methodically, the muted sounds of early morning traffic drifting up from the street below. But I knew the quiet wouldn't last. Soon, the people who had become my second family would start arriving, my team, who I had guided through countless late nights, celebrated milestones with, and stood by through personal struggles. What would they think when they saw me packing up my life into a cardboard box? Would they understand why I refused to fight? Why I wouldn't let this company see me break? A sharp ache settled in my chest as I realized that no matter how much I had given, it wasn't enough for Summit Crest Logistics. And in that empty office, with the first light of dawn illuminating the tears I refused to shed, I vowed that while they could discard me so easily, they would never erase the impact I'd had on the people who mattered most. As I carefully wrapped the little cactus in newspaper, the quiet of the office was broken by the soft click of heels on the polished floor. Madison from accounting rounded the corner, her eyes widening when they landed on my half-empty desk and the cardboard box by my side. "Charlotte, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling with confusion. "I've been let go," I replied, forcing my tone to remain calm as I taped the bottom of the box. What? Madison's face went from puzzled to horrified in an instant. "Apparently," I said, folding a sweater and laying it inside the box, taking 3 days of approved bereavement leave wasn't considered a proper prioritization of my work. Madison's eyes flashed with outrage. "That's not right. Have you told Samuel? He needs to know." Samuel Mitchell, the regional manager, had always championed our division's success, but even as Madison spoke his name, I knew it was already too late. "I'm not going to fight it," I said softly, "but I won't forget it either." One by one, the rest of my team began arriving. Thomas, our always optimistic project coordinator, stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the scene. Clara, who had grown from an intern into an outstanding analyst under my mentorship, dropped her coffee cup with a shatter, unable to hide her shock. Olivia, Noah, and Isabel soon joined, their faces reflecting everything from confusion to simmering anger. "What the hell is happening, Charlotte?" Thomas demanded, his usual cheerfulness gone. "It's done, Thomas," I said, meeting his eyes steadily. Gregory made his decision. "But why you?" Clara protested, tears welling up. "You just got us through the Meridian merger. Revenue is up 20% this quarter because of your planning." I offered a sad smile, trying to steady their emotions even as mine threatened to crack. Apparently, it wasn't enough. By 9:15, the 7 members of my core team had gathered around my desk, forming an unspoken circle of solidarity. Noah, our logistics expert who rarely showed emotion, looked like he might punch the nearest wall. Clara was openly sobbing. Behind them, Madison stood rigid, her face pale with anger. "Charlotte, you can't leave," Olivia insisted fiercely. "The Brighton contract renewal is next week, and no one else knows the system like you do." I finished folding a scarf, tucking it neatly into the box. Gregory should have thought of that before firing me for attending my father's funeral. The words, once spoken aloud, felt like a final blow. A sharp, cold voice sliced through the tension. "Everyone, back to your desks." Gregory Daniels had arrived, arms crossed, eyes hard. He stood behind my gathered team like a storm cloud. "We have deadlines to meet." No one moved. "Now," he barked, his voice rising with impatience. Slowly, reluctantly, they dispersed, each casting a lingering, pained look in my direction as they returned to their workstations. Gregory approached me, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "This could have been handled with more discretion, Charlotte," he said, his tone dripping with manufactured concern. "You should have waited until the end of the day to pack." I met his gaze without flinching. "Like the discretion you showed when you fired me by email after approving my bereavement leave?" His jaw tightened, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his eyes before he quickly masked it. "Human Resources is expecting you. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." I lifted my box and nodded slowly. "Don't worry, Gregory, I won't make a scene. But remember this moment, you might find it important someday." As I walked away, the weight of their silent support at my back, I knew the bonds we'd forged wouldn't be so easily broken. The Human Resources office was as sterile as a hospital room. White walls, a single potted plant wilting in the corner, and a clock ticking loudly enough to fill the uncomfortable silence. Barbara Lane, the HR specialist, sat behind a spotless desk, her expression sympathetic yet oddly rehearsed. She had joined Summit Crest only 6 months ago, and the awkwardness in her eyes made it clear she wasn't prepared for a situation like this. "I'm truly sorry about this, Charlotte," Barbara said softly as she slid a thin stack of papers across the polished wood. "And I'm very sorry about your father." "Thank you," I replied, my voice calm as I picked up the separation documents. The first page offered 2 weeks severance pay, the second, a strict non-disparagement clause. And the third, a reminder of the non-compete agreement that barred me from working with direct competitors within a 300-mile radius for 6 months. Barbara hesitated, lowering her voice. "Is there anything you'd like me to know about why this happened? It feels, abrupt." I took a deep breath, then pulled out my phone and opened the email that had ended my career at Summit Crest. I slid it across the table. Barbara's eyes scanned the words, widening in disbelief. "This is the actual termination notice?" she asked, her professional composure slipping. "Just an email, no performance warnings, no documented issues." "No meetings, no discussions, no improvement plans," I confirmed, my tone unwavering. 3 days of approved bereavement leave, and I'm fired for not prioritizing work. Barbara's pen paused over her legal pad, then she scribbled a note, her brow furrowing. "I need to verify some things with the legal department. Would you excuse me for a moment?" As she stepped out, I stared out the window at the Boise River glinting in the morning light. My father had loved that river. I could almost hear his voice whispering the words he used to tell me while we fished together. "The river moves, Charlotte, but the rocks stay steady. Be like the rocks." The memory brought both comfort and a fresh wave of grief that I fought hard to keep inside. 20 minutes later, Barbara returned, her smile polite but tight, her eyes avoiding mine. "Unfortunately, Charlotte," she began carefully, "Idaho is an at-will employment state. The company is within its legal rights to terminate employment at any time, for almost any reason." "I understand," I replied, already knowing what she would say. I picked up a pen and signed each page without hesitation. Barbara hesitated again, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Off the record, this isn't right. If you wanted to pursue action—" "I don't," I said firmly, meeting her gaze. "But thank you." As I stood and gathered my box, the sterile office felt colder than before. Walking out through the main floor, I felt dozens of eyes on me, some shocked, some tearful, others burning with silent anger. I caught Clara's gaze from across the room. She nodded once, a gesture of solidarity that spoke louder than any words. Outside, the crisp September air felt like a slap against my face. I loaded the box into my car and sat behind the wheel for a moment, letting the reality of what had happened sink in. My phone buzzed with texts. "Thomas, this is insane. How can we help, Clara? Are you okay? Olivia. Let's meet tonight." Each message was a reminder that while Summit Crest could sever my employment, it couldn't erase the bonds I'd built with people who truly mattered. And as the sun climbed higher over Boise, I felt a quiet resolve forming inside me. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of something new. I hadn't even pulled out of the parking lot when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Henry Foster, CEO of Atlas Transport Systems, Summit Crest's fiercest competitor. We'd met at an industry conference a year earlier, and he'd kept in touch ever since, checking in every few months with subtle recruitment pitches. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello, Henry." "Charlotte Reynolds," he said, his voice warm but edged with urgency. "Word travels fast in our industry. I just heard about what happened." I swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel. That was quick. "I'm sorry for your loss," he continued sincerely. "And even sorrier for the way Summit Crest treated you. That wasn't just poor management, it was inhumane." His words sent a small wave of relief through me. For the first time since reading that cold email, someone acknowledged what had happened without excuses. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "Listen, Charlotte," Henry said, his tone shifting to business. "I won't dance around this. Atlas is expanding our Pacific Northwest operations, and we need a strong leader. I've been hoping you'd join us, but I didn't expect the opportunity to come this way. The position of division director is yours if you want it." I blinked in shock, the words almost too good to be true. Division director at Atlas wasn't just a step up. It was a leap forward. More responsibility, better resources, and a seat at the executive table. "What about my non-compete agreement?" I asked carefully. "It prohibits me from working with direct competitors within 300 miles for 6 months. Summit Crest might try to enforce it." Henry let out a short, confident laugh. "Our legal team reviewed that agreement months ago when I first approached you. It's overly broad and, frankly, unlikely to hold up in court. Even so, if Summit Crest tries anything, Atlas will cover all your legal expenses." His assurance settled something deep inside me. For the first time since my father's funeral, I felt like I could breathe. "I need some time to think about it," I said, though part of me already knew my answer. "Of course," Henry agreed readily. "Take the weekend. We can discuss details Monday. But know this, Charlotte, we want you, and we'll make sure you have the support you need to succeed." As I ended the call, I noticed the sun breaking fully over the Boise skyline, golden light flooding the street. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Clara. "Where are you? We need to talk." Another from Thomas followed almost immediately. "Everyone's furious. We want to see you." I drove to my apartment, my mind whirling with possibilities. Could I really walk away from Summit Crest's betrayal and step into something better? Could I bring the people who mattered most with me? That evening, I met Clara and Thomas at a quiet cafe by the river. They arrived with stormy eyes and voices tight with anger. "You don't deserve this," Clara said fiercely. "You built our team from nothing. They can't treat you like you're disposable." Thomas nodded. "If you go somewhere else, we'll follow you. We won't stay at Summit Crest if this is how they treat their best people." I stared at them, their loyalty sparking a determination I hadn't dared to feel before. Henry's offer was more than a new job. It was a chance to rebuild, to create something better, not just for me, but for everyone who had stood by me. In that moment, watching the river flow steadily past the cafe window, I remembered my father's words. The rocks stay steady, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt like I could be steady again. Saturday morning dawned cold and clear, but I barely noticed the blue sky above Boise. My mind was fixed on the question that had kept me awake most of the night. Could Summit Crest really stop me from accepting Henry's offer? I arrived at the downtown office of Victor Ramirez, an employment lawyer recommended by a former colleague. His reception area smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish, and his framed diplomas lined the walls like silent sentinels of his expertise. "Charlotte Reynolds," he greeted me with a firm handshake. "Come in, have a seat." I settled into a leather chair across from his clutter-free desk, and handed him the email and my copy of the non-compete agreement. Victor adjusted his glasses, his eyes scanning each line with the precision of a surgeon. After what felt like an eternity, he set the papers down. This, he began, tapping the non-compete, is a classic example of an overly restrictive agreement. 6 months, 300 miles. That essentially forces you to leave the industry or the region entirely. Idaho courts rarely enforce non-competes that broad, especially if there's evidence of bad faith by the employer. My breath caught. Bad faith like firing me after approved bereavement leave? Exactly, Victor said, nodding. If Summit Crest tries to enforce this, they'll have to prove your new employment causes them actual harm, which is a hard argument to make considering they ended your employment without cause. His words lifted a weight off my chest. So, if I accept Atlas's offer? Victor leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. You should move forward carefully, but don't let this agreement intimidate you. Legally, you have strong footing, and if they attempt to pursue action, it could reflect poorly on them, especially given the circumstances of your termination. I let the relief wash over me, tempered by a surge of determination. Thank you, Victor, I said, standing to shake his hand. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again with messages from my team. Olivia, Dan just called an emergency Saturday meeting. Something's up. Noah, everyone's on edge. We need you. I felt a flicker of grim satisfaction. My absence was already causing ripples. If Gregory and Summit Crest had thought they could simply discard me without consequences, they were wrong. By Saturday afternoon, reports started pouring in from my team. The Brighton contract files were missing. Dan's emergency meeting had turned tense, with him lashing out at everyone as clients began demanding updates I alone used to provide. Clara texted me, "He's panicking. You'd think he'd planned better before firing you." That night, I met with Thomas and Clara again, this time joined by Olivia and Noah. We gathered at a quiet table at Willow's Cafe, the low hum of conversation around us offering a semblance of normalcy. But the mood at our table was electric. Have you decided? Olivia asked urgently. Will you take Atlas's offer? I hesitated only a moment before nodding. I will. But I want you all to know that there's a place for you too. If you decide to leave Summit Crest, I'll do everything I can to make sure you get fair consideration. They exchanged glances, looks of fierce determination rather than hesitation. Where you go, we go, Thomas said simply. For the first time since my father's funeral, I felt not just steady but powerful. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who'd stood by my side. Summit Crest had tried to break me, but in doing so, they'd strengthened something far greater, the loyalty and unity of a team ready to follow me into a new beginning. Sunday night settled in with an uneasy calm. I sat by my window, the lights of Boise twinkling beneath a velvet sky, thinking about the choice before me. Then I picked up my phone and dialed Henry Foster's number. Henry, I said when he answered on the second ring, I accept your offer, but I have one condition. Name it, he replied immediately. I want the chance to build my own team. If my former colleagues apply, I want them given fair consideration. Henry let out a low chuckle of approval. Charlotte, if they're half as talented as you, we'd be lucky to have them. Done. By Monday morning, I signed my contract with Atlas Transport Systems. My new title division director of Pacific Northwest Operations felt almost surreal as I read it. The compensation package was generous, 40% higher salary than what I'd earned at Summit Crest, a sign-on bonus, and a suite of benefits I'd only dreamed of before. No sooner had the ink dried on my acceptance than my phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from my team flooded in. Thomas, we're ready. Clara, just submitted my resignation. Olivia, HR has my notice. One by one, every member of my core team handed in their resignations, each effective immediately. By mid-morning, the Summit Crest office was in chaos. Olivia called me with the details. Dan's losing it, she reported breathlessly. He's demanding explanations, but everyone's stonewalling him. Clients are calling nonstop asking where you are, and the Brighton account manager just threatened to pull their contract if they don't get clarity. I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of it all. What had started as a personal tragedy had morphed into a professional reckoning that none of us could have predicted. A few hours later, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Paula McCormick, Summit Crest's regional manager. I answered, keeping my tone neutral. Charlotte, Paula began, her voice strained but controlled. I've just received 7 resignation letters from your former team, all effective immediately. Care to explain what's happening? I took a slow breath. I'm not sure what explanation you're looking for, Paula. I don't work for Summit Crest anymore. This isn't coincidental, she pressed, frustration cracking through her calm facade. Your entire team doesn't just resign en masse without a reason. I didn't rise to the bait. Perhaps you should ask Gregory Daniels. He's the one who decided to terminate me over approved bereavement leave. Silence fell on the line, heavy and tense. Paula exhaled sharply. Listen, Charlotte, I'm prepared to offer you your position back. With a 10% raise and a formal apology, the company needs your expertise. Brighton is threatening to walk, and other clients are asking questions. I paused, considering the desperation in her voice, but I knew my decision was already made. I appreciate the offer, Paula, but I've accepted a position elsewhere. We'll match whatever they're paying plus 15%. It's not about the money, I said quietly. Then what will it take, she asked, desperation now unmistakable. I looked out the window at the Boise River, the current steady and strong, going back in time to when my father died and Summit Crest choosing basic human decency over punishing me for grieving. The silence that followed was deeper than before, the kind that spoke of an understanding finally settling in. I have to go, Paula, I added gently but firmly. I start my new position today, and I don't intend to be late. Your non-compete, she began, but I cut her off. Feel free to have your legal team contact mine, though they might want to review the circumstances of my termination first. As I hung up, a sense of finality settled over me like a comforting blanket. Summit Crest had made its choice. Now, it was my turn to make mine. And I had chosen to move forward, with my team by my side, into a future we would build together. Tuesday morning dawned bright and cool as I stepped through the glass doors of Atlas Transport Systems for the first time as their new division director. The open concept workspace was alive with energy, sunlight streaming through wide windows that overlooked the Boise skyline. Henry Foster met me in the lobby, his smile warm and genuine. Welcome aboard, Charlotte, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Henry, I replied, the simple words carrying a depth of gratitude I couldn't fully express. Over the next few hours, I settled into my new office, a sleek space with a panoramic view of the city. I reviewed the team structures, project pipelines, and client lists that would now be under my supervision. The Atlas culture was already a breath of fresh air, collaborative, transparent, and genuinely invested in people. Mid-morning, Henry popped his head into my office, his expression pleased. All 7 of your former colleagues are scheduled for interviews starting tomorrow, he said. Their applications were impressive. We're excited to meet them. Thank you for giving them a fair chance, I said, my voice firm with emotion. Fair chance? Henry chuckled. Charlotte, it's clear Summit Crest's loss is our gain. As I logged into my new company email, messages from my former team trickled in. Thomas, interviews went well, Atlas feels amazing. Olivia, I can't believe how different the atmosphere is. Clara, thank you for opening this door for us. Each note felt like a piece of a puzzle falling into place, forming a picture of a future I hadn't dared to hope for just days ago. Meanwhile, word of our departures was clearly sending shockwaves through Summit Crest. By Wednesday afternoon, I received a call from Barbara Lane in HR. Her voice was quiet, almost conspiratorial. I shouldn't be telling you this, Charlotte, she began, but you deserve to know. Dan Weaver's been placed on administrative leave, and Paula has launched an investigation into management practices, especially around bereavement and time-off policies. I blinked, taken aback. Already, Barbara hesitated. The board is alarmed. Losing your entire specialized team at once to a competitor has forced them to take a hard look at how things have been handled. There's talk of a complete leadership shakeup. I thanked her sincerely before hanging up, the news confirming what I'd suspected. Summit Crest's culture had finally caught up with them. They weren't unraveling because we left. They were unraveling because they'd built an environment where loyalty and humanity were liabilities. That Friday, each member of my former team officially received and accepted offers from Atlas. We met that evening at a quiet Italian restaurant downtown, our laughter and conversation spilling across the table like a celebration. To new beginnings, Thomas toasted, lifting his glass. To a company that sees our value, Clara added. And to Charlotte, Olivia said, her eyes bright with gratitude, for showing us what real leadership looks like. I felt a surge of emotion, humbled by their trust and inspired by their courage. Together, we had transformed heartbreak into an opportunity to build something better. A place where people were valued not just for what they produced, but for who they were. As we stepped out into the crisp night air, I glanced back at the restaurant, the glow of its lights reflecting on the Boise River. My father's words echoed in my mind. Be like the rocks, Charlotte, I smiled. We had stayed steady, and now the current of change was finally moving in our favor. 3 months later, I stood at the front of Atlas's largest conference room, my 7 former colleagues seated proudly among our expanded team. The quarterly results glowed on the big screen behind me. 30% growth in our division, 4 major new clients, 3 of them former Summit Crest accounts, and operational efficiencies that had slashed costs by over 20%. When I finished, Henry Foster rose from his seat, beaming. Exceptional work, Charlotte, he said, his voice carrying across the room. You and your team have exceeded every expectation. I looked at Clara, Thomas, Olivia, Noah, and the others, each one thriving in their new roles. Their eyes shone with purpose, no longer clouded by fear of arbitrary punishment or indifferent leadership. I smiled. They deserve the credit. They've been remarkable. That afternoon, we gathered in my office. A small cake perched on the table. Clara placed a single candle on it and lit it. Today marks exactly 3 months since we all walked out together, she said. Consider this our Independence Day. I laughed deeply and freely, the sound echoing off the glass walls. As we enjoyed the cake, our phones buzzed with alerts. Summit Crest Logistics announces restructuring amid client exodus. A second notification revealed the Hernandez contract had officially switched to Atlas. A 20% chunk of Summit Crest's regional revenue gone overnight. Dan's gone too, Noah added, glancing up from his phone. He cleared out his office last Friday. I took a quiet breath, surprised at how little satisfaction I felt in their downfall. Instead, what settled in my heart was a sense of justice. Not revenge, but the simple truth catching up to those who had sown their own destruction. Summit Crest hadn't collapsed because we left. It fell because it treated people like disposable parts. I raised my coffee mug. May they learn that a company is only as strong as how it treats its people. And to Charlotte, Thomas added, his voice thick with emotion, who showed us we deserved better. As the months rolled on, our division became Atlas's crown jewel. Praise for its performance and the innovative solutions our united team brought to every challenge. One by one, my team members were promoted. Thomas took over a division of his own, Clara revolutionized our client relations approach, and Olivia became a respected voice in operational strategy across the company. On the 1-year anniversary of my termination from Summit Crest, I received a small package at my office. Inside was my old cactus plant, slightly taller, still thriving. A note attached read, "Rescued this from your desk. Thought you might want it back. Barbara." I placed the cactus on my windowsill, sunlight streaming across its green spines. Like me, it had survived being discarded and found a place where it could flourish. That evening, I stood by the Boise River, the water steady and constant as it rushed around the rocks. I thought about how one cold, impersonal email had set into motion a journey that led not just to my own growth, but to a chance for others to find the respect they deserved. Friends, if you take one thing from my story, let it be this. When life knocks you down, stay steady like the rocks. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. If you stand your ground and remember your worth. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss more real stories about resilience, courage, and the power of standing up for yourself. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear it. As I sat by the window of my office, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the Atlas building, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that brought me here. From the moment I received that cold termination email, to the day my entire team walked into a new beginning with me, and now, to this point, where we're not only succeeding, but truly valued and trusted. I remembered the exhausting nights at Summit Crest, the silent tears I swallowed when I felt my worth was ignored. I remembered the moment I faced the choice. Stay silent and endure, or walk away to find a place where I belonged. And I knew it was that brave choice that changed not only my life, but also the lives of the colleagues who trusted me enough to stand by my side. What makes me most proud isn't the growth numbers, the big contracts we signed, or the better paycheck. It's witnessing each member of my team rediscover their true worth, in a place where they're heard, supported, and treated like human beings instead of lifeless cogs in a harsh machine. I've learned a precious lesson that I want to share with you today. Never let anyone or any company convince you that your value is limited to your productivity or the hours you spend behind a desk. Life is too short to settle for a place that doesn't appreciate who you are. Sometimes, the most painful setbacks open doors to better paths, as long as you stay steady, like rocks standing firm in the rushing current. And you know what? We all deserve to work somewhere that values people above profits, where leaders don't just issue commands, but inspire and empathize. So, if you're suffering injustice or have been underestimated because of personal hardships, I hope my story gives you the courage to keep moving forward and reclaim your true worth. How did you feel after hearing this story? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one of them and would love to hear your story too. If you found this story inspiring, hit the like button and share it with someone who might need a push to make a change. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss more real, heartfelt stories about resilience, self-worth, and the power of standing up for yourself in today's world. Remember, the river of life can rush wildly, but you are the steady rock. And you have every right to choose where to plant your roots, grow tall, and shine bright.